Hello everyone. Today I'm bringing you another in the series of videos looking at the NBC overboots, the protective rubber overboots, which are part of the British NBC protective clothing system, which of course included the suit, boots, gloves and the respirator and so forth. What we're looking at here are the number 1 Mark III boots. These are often referred to as the fishtail pattern, and indeed that forms part of the nomenclature as well. And the reason for that will become very apparent when we have a look at these in some detail, which is what we're going to do now. So we'll first of all take a look at the overboots in their primary standard package. You can see that here, and as you can see from the label, fishtail actually forms part of the official nomenclature for these boots, and we'll see why that term is used shortly when we look at a set out of the packaging. So, looking at the label, first of all, we have the NATO stock number at the top there, as you can see, the designation overboots NBC number 1 Mark III fishtail. You have the contract number there as well. And then L&B Rubber Company Limited is the manufacturer. That's Leyland and Birmingham Rubber, who were a prolific manufacturer of all sorts of rubber products for the British Army, respirators, overboots and so forth. You can see the packing date here, which was originally going to be something in 1979, but is February 1980, sort of overstamped there and the original date scribbled out. But I believe these do appear in the late 1970s to start replacing the Mark II. As I say, something of an improvement. The intention of the change in the design, which we're going to see, was to try and make these fit better around the foot, around the boot that's worn within them, and stop them sliding around and so forth, make them a bit more suitable for moving and fighting in. You can see the primary standard package there, and then see reverse full fitting instructions, which we'll of course have a look at when we look at the set out of the packaging. See, notched at the end here to make them easy to open. See that there. And the boots are neatly stored inside, neatly packaged together and then held in place with rubber bands, as you can see there, which are still holding up. They haven't broken. So that's the set of boots in the packaging. I'll bring in a set of these out of the packaging now, which have been opened. We'll have a look at those and you can see the design. So here we have a pair of the Mark III fishtail overboots to have a look at in more detail. And you can see where the name comes from immediately if I do this at the back. So rather than with the Mark II, you have, as we have at the toe here, a single piece coming back with an eyelet in the middle. On the Mark III, that's been changed to have these 2 eyelets on this fishtail shaped piece at the back. And as we'll see in a minute, this wraps up around the heel and is supposed to better secure the overboot over the boot worn inside it, and obviously therefore allow this to be used a bit more effectively in terms of moving around and so forth. It doesn't really solve that problem, unfortunately, but it was an attempt to try and improve on the situation compared to the Mark II, and this is one of the incremental steps in the improvement of this design. Not that it ever really solved the problem, but it was an incremental step towards that. Looking underneath here, you can see the tread pattern is the same as we saw previously, and the design of the eyelets, the sole and everything, other than having this different shape at the back, is basically exactly the same. I'll just move this one out of the way here, and we'll have a look at this individual boot in a bit more detail. You can see here the actual overboot part itself, which is glued onto the sole, is made of this thinner rubber. And this is appears to be cloth reinforced, as you can see there, and it's glued together front and rear. You can see that there, the seams on the inside, and that's then glued onto this sole, which is made of a thicker rubber. You can see that there. Rubber eyelets around the edge, which are thickened to make them a bit stronger, and then we do have a stamp here, which you can see 1984 and LBR Company. That's Leyland and Birmingham Rubber again, as you can see there. The laces are attached at the front here first of all, and then they loop back through the eyelets and pull up this tail at the back around the heel to better secure the boot over the boot worn within it. The best way to illustrate that, or the best way of showing you how these are laced up really, is to show you the instructions, which we have here. I'll bring these into shot. Should you wish to read these, of course, in detail, you can pause here, but you can see how, as opposed to the Mark II, the laces come back from lacing up the toe and the sides of the boot to the fishtail at the rear. You have a lace through each eyelet, and that then pulls that up around the heel. Knotted in front, the laces come back around the leg and then knotted in the front again. And the idea is knotting it higher up this thin rubber section up the leg provides a bit of a seal against the NBC suit, which is obviously, these are worn over. The details here obviously stress, place the heel in front of grooves on the sole, and we can see those here. So the idea of that again is to make sure the heel is in the right position for the fishtail shape at the back here to wrap up around the back of the heel in the correct manner to try and secure these. And as I say, the instructions, you can pause and read these should you wish to see that in more detail. So an incremental change in the design, an attempt to solve the problem or an attempt to improve these in terms of allowing soldiers to move and fight whilst wearing them. Not a solution to the problem, but an incremental step in that direction. And as I say, these introduced in the late 1970s. You do occasionally see these used in the Falklands. There are a couple of photographs floating around of them being worn simply as waterproof footwear. And of course, these would continue to be used through the 1980s up until the introduction of the Mark IV. And I'm sure they continued to be used in training after the introduction of the Mark IV as well. And the Mark IV, of course, carrying on to be used in the Gulf, which is something we've talked about briefly on the channel previously, but we will have a look at those boots in more detail going forward as well. So I do hope you found it interesting looking at these. Very much an incremental step away from the Mark II with slight improvement, and obviously the idea of these improvements, as mentioned, was to make these boots more suitable for actually moving and fighting in. That was one of the biggest problems with these, was they really impaired movement. And it's a problem with all of the lace-up NBC overboots, and it's very difficult to get these tight enough around the boot worn inside them to stop them moving around and sliding around, and that is an issue with these. Obviously that's been rectified with more modern designs, but that's really beyond the scope of my interest. Probably the last pattern we're going to look at will be the Mark IV, which we'll be looking at in the not too distant future. Another lace-up design of overboots, of course, used in the Gulf. So quite interesting from that point of view. So that's everything for this video. I do hope you found it interesting looking at these. If you have found this interesting and you'd like to see more of this sort of thing, please do consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the notification button down below. And that will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and you would like to support the channel, you can, both Patreon and PayPal, I'll link down below. And as always, a massive thank you to everybody who supports the channel using those two methods. It really is greatly appreciated, as I always say. Thank you all very much indeed. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can. Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are all linked down below. And if you'd like to get in touch but you don't really use social media, there is of course an email address down there as well. That's everything for this video. So until next time, bye for now.